The first explosion lit up the eastern sky like a second sun. At first, nobody knew what it was. Some thought it was a meteor. Others guessed it was another failed orbital test. People grabbed their phones, pointing them up at the bright column of smoke as it climbed higher and higher, until the second blast came, this one closer. Stronger. Louder. And that's when the screaming started. It wasn't a meteor. And it wasn't one of ours. For a few seconds, everything stood still. Then the power grid failed. Street lights went dark. Traffic lights blinked out, plunging intersections into chaos. The air changed. It smelled like ozone and burnt metal. And in that strange silence that came before the panic, a strange hum rolled across the land, deep, metallic, and wrong. The news broke in pieces. A flash here. A message there. Satellite feeds scrambled. Cell towers failed. But one thing came through over and over again. We were under attack. No warning. No declaration. No face to the enemy. Just impact. By the time the world realized it wasn't an accident, half the planet was already burning. The first official footage came from a news drone, its feed shaky and filled with static. It hovered over what was once a thriving city, now a crater. The buildings were gone. Streets erased. There were no signs of tanks, no aircraft, no troops. Just nothing. A hole in the earth. And standing at the edge of it, something moved. It wasn't human. Too tall. Too many joints. Its armor shimmered in the smoke. It tilted its head at the drone like a curious bird, and then raised one arm. The drone cut out. We didn't know what they were. Not at first. Not who they were, not what they wanted. They didn't try to speak. Didn't answer any attempts at communication. No signs. No messages. Just destruction. Cold. Surgical. Precise. Governments scrambled jets, launched nukes, screamed into the void with every bit of firepower they had left. But by then it was too late. The skies were no longer ours. Somehow they had shut down our satellites. Disrupted our weapons. Hacked into things we didn't even know could be hacked. They weren't trying to invade. They were erasing us. And it wasn't about territory. It wasn't about resources. They wanted us gone. But that's where they made their first mistake. Because humans don't go down easy. Not all cities fell. Not all people ran. Some fought. Some bled. Some stood their ground with nothing but homemade weapons, ancient rifles, and boiling rage. And some learned fast. The first kill came from an old mechanic in the Colorado mountains. No military background. No high-tech weapons. Just a deep hatred for whoever had taken his wife in the first wave. He rigged an EMP from scrap, baited one of them into a trap, and took it down with a sledgehammer when it glitched out. He didn't survive the second one, but word spread. They could be hurt. They could be killed. And we humans were fast learners when death's at the door. A resistance started to form. Not one big force but dozens of small ones. Guerrilla units. Underground fighters. People who knew how to survive with nothing. People who'd spent years forgotten, written off, looked past. Now they were the last hope. They never showed mercy. So we stopped asking for it. This wasn't about politics anymore. Or money. Or old grudges. This was about survival. For the first time in history, the entire species had one common goal. They started it. And we swore we'd finish it. The story that follows isn't about generals in bunkers or presidents in safe rooms. It's about the people who didn't have a voice until everything collapsed. The ones who lived in shadows, worked in silence, and bled for a world that barely noticed they existed. People like the boy who climbed inside the wreckage of a downed enemy craft and figured out how to power it up using parts from a broken windmill. Or the old woman who had survived 2 wars already and now ran a training camp in the woods, teaching kids how to shoot, hide, and think. There was a girl from the coast, quiet, shy, always buried in books. She cracked the language they used, deciphered the code behind their communications. She couldn't speak above a whisper, but she rewrote our entire defense strategy with a notebook and a flashlight. Every one of them mattered. Every soul lost fueled the fire. And it was spreading. The aliens weren't invincible. Just faster. Smarter. But they didn't understand us. Not really. They didn't know what pain does to us. What we do when cornered. How we don't stop. How even when everything burns, something human still crawls out of the ashes, angrier, tougher, and more determined than before. They had the tech. The ships. The weapons. We had each other. And sometimes that's enough. One night, deep in the ruins of what used to be a city, a group of survivors uncovered something. Something buried under the remains of a skyscraper. It was part of their tech, still humming faintly. Damaged but not destroyed. One of the engineers looked at it, then back at the others. "It's a door," she said. A door to what? Someone asked. She stared at it, then whispered, I think it leads to them. And just like that, everything changed. Because up until then we'd been defending, running, hiding. But now, maybe, just maybe, we could take the fight back to them. Not everyone agreed. Some said it was suicide. Others said it didn't matter. If we were going to die, we'd do it on our terms. But in the quiet corners of bunkers, in the candlelit cellars where children slept beside rifles, the idea spread. No more hiding. No more waiting. We go to them. It wasn't easy. The door didn't open like some sci-fi portal. It took weeks just to get it stable, longer to get someone through alive. The first teams didn't return. The second barely made it back. But they brought images, fragments, glimpses of what was out there. Another world. Machines. Cities floating in voids. Factories harvesting something organic. And cages. Full of things that once looked human. The rage that followed wasn't loud. It was silent. Heavy. A kind of cold fury that changes people. The plan was simple. Get in. Find their command. Break it. Shut them down from the inside. But nothing in this war was ever simple. The last part of the intro isn't a happy one. It's not the kind of moment where music swells and victory feels close. Because that's not where we are yet. This is the part where the team stands at the edge of the door. Their bags packed. Faces hard. Hearts pounding. Knowing they might not come back. Knowing what's waiting could be worse than anything we've seen. But they step through anyway. Because someone has to. Because we remember what they did. Because we never asked for this war. But now that it's here, we're going to finish it. And somewhere out in the dark, something moves. Watching. Waiting. Smiling. It thinks we're too late. That we're too broken. That we'll never make it. But that's their second mistake. Because they don't know us. Not yet. The jump wasn't like anything they expected. They said it would feel like falling. That your stomach would twist, your ears would pop, and then it would all go black for a second. But when they stepped through that fractured door into the unknown, it felt like dying. Every memory, every thought, every feeling was torn apart and stitched back together too fast to understand. And then came the cold. Not the kind of cold that numbs your fingers or makes you shiver. This was deeper. It soaked into their bones, into the places where fear hides. The kind of cold that makes you forget what warmth even was. They landed hard, flat ground, metal beneath them. The air was thin. The sky above was dark, but not black. It shimmered like oil on water, and there were no stars. The team, 6 of them, stood slowly, checking their gear, watching each other for signs of shock. None of them spoke for a long time. Just the sound of breathing, the crackle of their comms, and something distant, mechanical. A slow, pulsing thrum. It wasn't Earth. That much was clear. No trees. No wind. Just endless corridors made of a material they couldn't name, smooth, seamless, unnatural. Everything looked like it had been grown, not built. No bolts. No welds. It felt alive somehow. Like it was listening. One of them, an older man with a scar that ran down the side of his neck, pressed his hand to the nearest wall. This place isn't just a base, he muttered. It's part of them. Nobody answered. They started moving. Slowly. Carefully. The plan was simple. Scout the layout, find a data node, plant a relay beacon, get out. In and out, they'd said. 30 minutes tops. But they'd already been inside an hour, and the path behind them was gone. They didn't take a wrong turn. They were sure of that. The path had just vanished. Sealed behind them. Replaced by a new wall. Smooth. Silent. As if it had never been there. That was the moment they realized this wasn't a building. It was a trap. Back on Earth, people tried to live like they still had time. Like grocery stores would reopen. Like governments would rebuild. But under all that hope was something else. A waiting kind of fear. Everyone knew this wasn't just an invasion. It was extermination. The door had been their only chance to hit back. To strike at the source. But now, inside this place, with the team cut off and surrounded by something they didn't understand, it was starting to feel like they'd walked into the lion's mouth with no way out. Their comms flickered again. Static. Then a voice, distorted, hollow. "Who's there?" the youngest of them whispered. She was barely 20, her hands trembling around the rifle she hadn't yet used. Her name was Tess. She joined after watching her whole town disappear in a blink. She didn't speak much. But now her voice cracked. No one answered. The sound returned. The same voice. Same static. But the words weren't right. It was her voice this time. Tessa's voice. Whispering something she'd never said. "I saw them. In the fire." She froze. "That's not me." Then came another voice. The mechanic. The one who built the door. He was still on Earth monitoring the mission. But now his voice came through too cold and distant. They're watching you. Don't trust what you hear. And then silence again. One of the team, the woman who led them, a former soldier with eyes like stone, checked the signal logs. Nothing. No trace of any transmission. Just background hum and silence. Still they pressed forward. Because turning back wasn't an option. Back on Earth, the resistance was falling apart. The door had drained too many resources. Too many fighters gone. Supplies were low. Spirits even lower. And now, with no updates coming back through the link, people started whispering that maybe the mission had failed. That maybe they'd never come back. But some didn't believe that. Some kept the fire burning. A man named Cole, who once led logistics for the resistance in the south, took control of the radio tower. He'd lost his family to one of the sky attacks and hadn't spoken more than a sentence in months. But now, every night he sent one message on loop. We're still here. You're not alone. Most nights no one answered. But he sent it anyway. Back inside, the team had found something new. A chamber, wide, hollow, filled with blue mist. At the center was a structure that didn't belong. Metal. Worn. Rusted. Human-made. It was a satellite. One of Earth's own. Lost years ago. Presumed destroyed. They stood around it, staring, trying to understand. How is this here? One of them asked. No way it got here on its own, someone else replied. That was when the theory started to form, that the enemy hadn't just attacked. They'd been watching. For decades. Collecting pieces of us. Learning. Planning. And now, here they were, inside a place that had studied Earth longer than anyone alive had been breathing. The satellite was torn open. Its black box was missing. But scratched into the inside casing, by someone or something, was a message. They don't come from the stars. They come from under. That didn't make sense. Not yet. But it changed everything. They pushed deeper. Around them the walls began to shift. Patterns moved. Not fast enough to see, but just enough to notice. Like eyes blinking in the dark. Like breathing. One of them, quiet, sharp, the kind of person who notices things others miss, pressed his ear to the floor. He said he heard footsteps beneath them. Hundreds. Marching in rhythm. Then something banged against the wall. Once. Twice. Then silence. They aimed their weapons. Waited. Nothing came. The older man with the scar knelt and whispered, "They're testing us. Seeing what we'll do." It was hard to breathe now. Not from panic, but from something else. The air was changing. Growing heavier. Like it was being stolen one breath at a time. Then the lights dimmed. Not all at once but in waves. Darkness moved like a wave through the hall, swallowing the far end of the corridor. And then they saw it. For just a second. A shape. Too tall. Too thin. Unmoving. Watching. Then gone. They didn't run. They couldn't. Their legs wouldn't move. Something in the air, in the walls, held them still. Like a weight pressing down on their minds. They were being scanned. And whatever scanned them, didn't find what it wanted. Because then the walls screamed. A low guttural sound. 1,000 machines crying out at once. Lights exploded. The floor shook. And from the end of the hall, figures began to appear. Not walking. Floating. Armor black as space. Limbs jointed like spiders. No faces. No words. Just the hum. Weapons came up. The team opened fire. Bullets sparked. Metal cracked. But for every one that fell, another took its place. They ran. No formation. No orders. Just pure survival. Every corridor twisted. Every turn shifted. The place moved with them, pushing them toward something. They didn't know it then, but they were being funneled. Not to an exit. To a memory. They broke into a vast open space. A dome. The ceiling above stretched so high it disappeared. And in the center was a single chair. Not alien. Human. A man sat there. Hooked to wires. Breathing slowly. Alive. The soldier in charge stepped forward, whispering, "Who is he?" The man opened his eyes. He smiled. And then he said the words that none of them would ever forget. "You're late." Before they could answer, the ground opened beneath them. Not all of them fell. Just two. The others screamed, reaching, too late. And then, silence again. Below, in the dark, one of them stirred. Bones aching. Head spinning. She opened her eyes. Not alone. Something was breathing in the dark. She raised her rifle. Voice shaking. "Who's there?" Then a whisper, her own voice again echoing back. "I am." But this time, it wasn't a recording. And it wasn't friendly. Back on Earth, Cole sat in the tower, staring at the transmission logs. A flicker. A signal. Weak, barely a blip. But it was there. The door was still open. Which meant one thing. They weren't dead. Not yet. And if they were alive, then maybe, just maybe, this war wasn't over. Not even close. The silence didn't last. It never did in that place. Down in the dark, she tried to steady her breathing. Her leg was broken, she could feel it, sharp and wrong, but there was no time to deal with it. Not now. Not with that thing watching her. It hadn't moved. Not yet. But she could feel its eyes, if it had eyes, pressing into her like cold steel. Then the whisper came again. Her voice twisted. I am. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to move, dragging herself toward a bit of cover. Something metal. Some kind of wreckage. The space down here didn't feel like the rest of the structure. It felt older. Cracked. Forgotten. And it stank like rust and something worse. She peeked around the edge, heart racing. The shape was gone. No sound. No breath. Just empty dark. She pulled her backup flare, struck it. The sudden light hurt her eyes, but at least she could see, and what she saw made her blood freeze. There were others. Not just one. Rows of them. Human bodies. Suspended. Faces covered. Tubes snaking from their arms, their spines. Some were breathing. Others, not. She staggered to her feet, ignoring the pain. This wasn't just a war machine. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a harvest. Up above, the rest of the team wasn't doing much better. The room with the chair was gone, erased like it never existed. Just a wall now. Flat and cold. The man who'd said, "You're late," was nowhere to be found. They kept moving. No map. No signals. Just instinct. But then something shifted. The older man with the scar stopped suddenly. His eyes wide. I know this place, he said. The others looked at him, confused. He pointed at the wall ahead. This isn't the alien structure anymore. This is home. Or it was. They followed his gaze and then they saw it too. The hallway stretched into a perfect copy of an old Earth facility. One of the early defense bunkers built during the first weeks of the invasion. Concrete walls. Emergency lights. Posters peeling off the surface with fading words like endure and survive. I was stationed here, he whispered. The others didn't speak. Because they knew what this meant. The enemy hadn't just studied them. They had copied them. Memories, buildings, words, maybe even thoughts. One of them reached out to touch the wall, but before his fingers met it, it changed. The texture shimmered, then dissolved into static like a broken screen. An illusion, but built from real memories. Then came the sound. A child crying. Faint. Echoing. The soldier in charge raised her weapon. It's not real, she said firmly. But the sound pulled at something inside all of them. A voice no one wanted to hear again. A reminder of what was lost. The crying shifted. Became laughter. Then screams. The wall burst open. And out stepped a figure wrapped in shadow. Not alien. Not entirely. His limbs were human but too long. Its face covered by something smooth. No eyes. No mouth. Just flesh stretched tight. It walked like it remembered being a person. But it wasn't. They opened fire. The bullets hit, but didn't stop it. It didn't bleed. It didn't scream. It just kept coming. Then another stepped out behind it. Then another. The older man shouted, "Fall back. That's not memory. That's them wearing our skin." The group ran again, ducking into side corridors, ducking under flickering lights and scraping pipes. Every step felt heavier. The air thick with the stench of decay. And the whispers followed. Voices from the past. Regrets. Secrets no one had ever told. Things only they could know. Someone grabbed the youngest, Tess, and she nearly shot him until she saw his face. One of their own. The one who fell with her. He was alive. Barely. Bleeding from the head. Eyes unfocused. He whispered, "They took something from me? I don't know what. I feel hollow." They pulled him up. Moved together. But now everyone was thinking the same thing. How did he escape? And what did they put in his place? Back at the resistance tower, Cole stared at the signal again. Stronger now. It wasn't just a blip. It was a message. But not in any code they knew. It was music. An old Earth song. Played backwards. He called in the only linguist left in the camp. An older woman with tired eyes and a spine too stiff to bend. She listened to the song, played it forward, backward, slowed it, twisted it, and then she paled. "It's not just a song," she said. "It's a warning." Cole leaned in. "From who?" She looked up. "From them, they're speaking to us." He shook his head. Why warn us? But she didn't answer. She just played the message again. And in the static between notes, a voice whispered, "They lied to you." Meanwhile, underground, the flare the girl had struck finally burned out. And she was left in darkness again. She tried to move, dragging herself toward a flicker of light ahead. She didn't call out. Didn't breathe too loud. She could hear the footsteps now. Too many. And then, something changed. She saw the outline of a wall ahead. Metal, real, solid. A door. It opened with a hiss. And behind it, Earth. She blinked, stunned. The sun. Trees. When? Couldn't be real. Couldn't. But it looked right. It smelled right. A man stood there, hand outstretched. Smiling. "Come on," he said gently. "It's safe now. We stopped them." She didn't move. Because something was off. He was smiling too wide. And he had no shadow. She raised her weapon. "You're not real." He tilted his head. Real enough to matter. Then the sky behind him turned black, and cracked. It shattered like glass, revealing not earth, not the sky, but rows upon rows of vessels. Not ships. Pods. Each holding a human face, eyes closed, asleep. All suspended. And from the dark behind those pods, something vast moved. Something that wasn't meant to be seen. She screamed and fired, and the illusion shattered. She was alone again. Broken. Bleeding. But awake. The enemy had been using illusions. Not just to frighten. But to test. To learn what humans would choose. What they feared. What they regretted. It wasn't about winning the war. It was about understanding the heart of their prey. And reshaping themselves to match it. Above her, the rest of the team had made it to another chamber. A control room. Or what passed for one. They could see feeds now, views from thousands of angles. All showing the same thing. Earth. Being watched. Analyzed. Simulated. Then a new image appeared. Every one of them. Projected. Profiled. And next to each profile, a clone. Not grown. Copied. But something wasn't right. The copies weren't perfect. They were close but cold. Missing something. And then they saw the word above the data feed. Integration. Failed. The enemy had tried to become them. Tried to replace them. And failed. Because there was something in humanity that couldn't be coded. Something wild. Unpredictable. Illogical. Something that couldn't be cloned. And that was when they understood the real reason for the war. Not conquest. Not resources. Not territory. Desperation. The enemy wasn't just attacking. They were dying. And they wanted to become something else. To survive. But to survive they needed us. Back on Earth, Cole played the message one last time. He could hear it now too. That whisper. "They lied to you." Then a second voice joined it. A child. Not alien. Not robotic. Just a scared, trembling voice. "Please, help us." And just like that, everything changed. Because maybe the war wasn't just between humans and monsters. Maybe it was between something worse. Something trapped inside the enemy. Trying to escape. And now, they'd found us. She could barely hear anymore. Just the pounding of her pulse and the distant hum of something massive shifting in the dark above her. The chamber shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Sparks fell like dying stars. They knew. They knew she had seen the pods. Knew she had fired. Knew she'd pierced the illusion. But it was too late for silence now. Too late to hide. She crawled toward the terminal in the center of the room. Fingers trembling, bleeding. The screen flickered to life without her touch. Lines of alien code ran across it. Then a phrase formed, clear, sharp, in Earth's language. "Make your choice." She hesitated. There were 2 buttons. No labels. Just colors, one blue, one red. Outside the screaming started. Not from the enemy. From the walls themselves. Like the metal had a soul and it was being torn apart. Above her, the team was watching the same screen, the same choice. Thousands of kilometers apart, but connected now by something deeper than signal. Every resistance base. Every outpost. Every last survivor with access to a feed was seeing the same thing. Make your choice. And still, no instructions. No hint. Just those words. And the memory of everything they'd learned. The enemy wasn't just a force. It wasn't just machines or meat or some alien hive. It was layers. A species built on simulation. On stolen minds and borrowed forms. But deep beneath all of it, something was crying for help. Something still human-shaped. She looked at the blue button. Then the red. One of them would shut it down. The other? She didn't know. And neither did anyone else. That was the trick. The enemy had learned everything about humanity, except the one thing that couldn't be predicted. Just that chaos. That irrational, aching, impulsive side of humans that no model could copy. No machine could imitate. That's what made them dangerous. That's what made them free. She thought of the others. Her team. The ones lost in the tunnels. The ones who didn't make it. The old man with the scar. The boy with the broken transmitter. The woman who sacrificed herself 2 floors back just to buy 10 more seconds. And she made her choice. Her hand slammed the red button. Everything stopped. The screaming ceased. The power flickered. Then silence. Cold and heavy. The screen blinked once more. Resetting core program. She backed away, half expecting the world to collapse around her. But something else happened. The walls peeled back, not physically but in a way her mind could feel. Like a curtain being drawn aside. She saw the truth. The enemy was not one thing. It was 2. A species that had split itself long ago. One side choosing evolution through memory theft, simulation, domination. The other side exiled, trapped inside, their signals twisted into noise. The message, asterisk asterisk, they lied to you, asterisk asterisk, wasn't from them. It was from within them. The one still trying to be alive. And when she pressed the button, she hadn't killed the enemy. She'd freed its prisoners. Across every vessel, the pods cracked open. Bodies fell. Not all survived. But some did. Humans. Real ones. People who had vanished in the early days of the invasion. People taken and kept in stasis. Used for patterns. For DNA. For soul. She found herself standing among them now. Some younger. Some older. All blinking into the light of a world they didn't remember leaving. The girl turned toward the terminal again. It had gone dark. But something inside her said it wasn't over. Not yet. Above, Cole's tower erupted in noise. Dozens of signals now, feeds from enemy ships suddenly going dark. Others rerouting. The enemy AI gone. Dead. Maybe. Replaced? Likely. In the wreckage of one captured ship, they found something strange. An alien node, still alive, speaking Earth languages. Only one word repeated over and over. Thank you. The war was over. At least, the one they thought they were fighting. But Earth wasn't cheering. Not yet. Because the twist came after. 3 days later, during cleanup, one of the rescued humans snapped. Killed 2 medics. Ripped open a containment lock. Eyes blank. Mouth silent. They sedated him. Ran scans. What they found changed everything. He wasn't just altered. He wasn't just used. His neural patterns had been blended. Not just human. Not just alien. Something new. The team traced it. Compared it. Ran every test they could. Then someone whispered what they all feared. They didn't just want to be us. They succeeded, asterisk asterisk. Because not all copies had failed. Some worked. Some passed. And now they weren't sure if the war had ended. Or just evolved. The woman who pressed the button, she sat by a cliff now, overlooking the sea. The new arrivals had been sent to isolation camps for protection. Study. Decompression. But she wasn't sure that was enough. She could still hear the voice sometimes. In her sleep. Or in the static between waves. They lied to you. But who? The monsters? The prisoners? Or maybe someone else entirely? She touched her chest. The scar they left when they tried to pull data from her. The place where they tried to understand what made her human. They never found it. Because maybe being human wasn't in the flesh. Or the words. Or even the memories. Maybe it was in the choice. In the ability to choose wrong. To forgive. To resist. To sacrifice. And maybe now that something else had tasted that freedom, it wouldn't go back in the dark. It would rise. Not as an enemy, but as a mirror. Watching. Learning. Becoming something new. Not quite human. Not quite alien. But something in between. And now, they were out there. Not many. Just a few. But enough. Enough to change everything. Enough to start something else. And this time, we wouldn't see it coming. The sea didn't care what had happened. Waves still rolled in, slow and steady, washing over rocks shaped by centuries of silence. She sat there as the sun broke the clouds, gold leaking over the water like a quiet apology from the sky itself. They'd won. That was the word being used across every surviving broadcast. Victory. The enemy was gone. Their fleets either silent or in retreat. The core signals that once pulsed across the void, cut. The war maps stopped updating. The red zones faded. The high command had stopped issuing warnings. But that didn't mean the war was really over. She watched a boy, 6 or 7 maybe, chase birds down the edge of the bluff. He wasn't from Earth. Not really. He'd been one of the rescued. One of the few small ones they found in the stasis halls, preserved like some ancient relic, tucked into a machine's memory like a song it couldn't forget. Now he laughed, ran, skinned his knees. Human. But different. Like a dream you couldn't quite place after waking up. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Too much had changed. They called it the aftershock phase, those first few weeks after the final strike. Earth's nations had reconnected, or at least tried. People returned to cities that no longer hummed. They salvaged, rebuilt, planted what seeds they could. But the real rebuilding was inside. No one trusted what they saw anymore. Every neighbor could be something else. Every face could be a mask. And no one forgot the message that came at the very end. The one transmitted across all channels just moments before the button was pressed. Not from the aliens. From the ones that used to be human. You taught us how to hope. It should have been a relief. A sign of peace. But the tone, it hadn't felt finished. It had felt open. Like a door left unlocked. Some believed those survivors, the blended minds, had started something bigger. Emerging. A second humanity. Others said no. They were victims. Tools. Data puppets without a will of their own. The truth, like everything else in the war, sat somewhere in between. She ran her fingers through the dirt. Grass grew again here. Real living grass. They'd thought the soil was poisoned. But it came back. So did some of the old birds. Deer. Even laughter. She heard it in campfires. In stories. In voices that hadn't laughed in years. That was something the enemy never understood. Humans always come back. Even from the edge of extinction. Even from the belly of a machine. Even from death. The survivors of the deep pods were being studied now. Kindly, gently, but studied. The scans showed changes, minor shifts in how they processed emotion. How they read time. They dreamed differently. They remembered things no one told them. One man, an old veteran taken during the first orbital raids, could recite poetry from languages he'd never learned. Another woman woke up drawing symbols no one could decode. The kid from the beach? He never cried. Never spoke either. But he watched everything. Maybe they were broken. Maybe they were evolving. It didn't matter now. They were here. They were human. That was enough. She stood up. Her legs still ached where the bone had splintered months back during the first breach. They'd patched it with a local compound and recycled implants from down scout bots. It didn't quite match, but it held. That was Earth now. Held together. Not pretty, but alive. At the base, word had spread that some of the captured ships were coming online. Not under enemy control, but under ours. Their systems were learning from us. Responding to our hands, our minds, like they recognized something familiar in our chaos. Some whispered that the machines missed the minds they once carried. That deep down they were lonely. She didn't know if that was true. But when she sat inside the shell of one of those vessels, when her fingers brushed the console, it didn't fight her. It breathed. Faintly. Like something relieved. She thought about the lives lost. The billions. Whole cities turned to ash. Oceans that boiled. Moons cracked apart just to keep orbital dominance. And still, after all that, the universe hadn't gone quiet. It whispered back. Maybe that's what scared the old generals the most. Not that the war had ended. But that the enemy might return as us. Already there were factions forming. Some called for full sterilization. Wipe out any tech linked to the old signal. Others wanted integration. Harmony. She didn't join either. She just kept walking. They asked her once, why'd you press the red button? She didn't give some long answer. She just said, it felt right. That's what it always came down to. Instinct. Gut. That strange, untamed part of humans that made choices no algorithm could trace. They'd started it, sure. But we finished it because of that. Not because we had the biggest weapons. Not because we had the smartest minds. But because we had something wild inside us. Something stubborn. Forgiving. Brutal. Beautiful. Human. Now she watched the horizon shift as the morning thickened. A shuttle rose in the distance, old engines sputtering but still lifting. Someone new heading off to help with the clean zones. A few of the rescued had asked to go too. Not to fight, but to see. To understand where they'd been. What they'd been made into. They wanted to learn the shape of the cage they'd escaped. She couldn't stop them. Didn't want to. Because she knew now, we weren't just building back the old world. We were making something new. And maybe the ones who had tried to erase us, twist us, copy us, maybe they'd become part of it. Not through domination. Not through war. But through that quiet, final thing they never saw coming. Mercy. That was the twist. that we let them live. Even after everything. Even after the stolen faces, the raised skies, the voices they mimicked just to cut deeper. We let them live. And in that mercy we won something they could never take. Our future. On a distant ridge, one of the new humans, blended, quiet, still, held up a flower. The kind that hadn't bloomed on this side of the mountain in a decade. And she smiled. Not because it was over, but because it had begun. A world where humanity wasn't just a species anymore. It was a choice, a direction, a promise. They started it, we finished it, and now we begin again.